Ever considered gratitude for the roof over your head today? Ethan's voice cut through the air like a knife. I looked up from my sketch pad, trying to hold back the irritation rising within me. Ava had only just arrived, and already Ethan was acting as if we owed her something. Gratitude? I responded, pushing my glasses up my nose. Let's start with the respect that's missing. Ava stood at the doorway of our neat Connecticut home, her designer bag clutched in one hand and an air of entitlement as thick as the perfume she wore hanging around her. She cast a disdainful look around the room, her eyes settling on a framed photo of Ethan and me on our wedding day. She smirked. Is this temporary, Ava? I need to know, I asked, forcing calm into my voice. Ava shrugged, flipping her glossy hair over her shoulder. Depends. I haven't figured out my next move yet, she said nonchalantly. Maybe a few weeks? Ethan stepped in, his broad shoulders filling the room with his presence. It's only until she gets back on her feet, Josie. We can manage for a little while. A little while turns into months, I muttered, knowing he heard me. Come on, Josie, Ethan sighed. She's family. Ava crossed the living room, her high heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She glanced at me with a sly smile. Is that where you keep the guest towels? She asked, pointing towards the hallway closet. Yes, I replied tersely. First shelf. Perfect. Her sarcasm was palpable. I watched as she walked away, the tension in the room thick enough to cut with a knife. Ethan joined me in the kitchen, leaning against the counter. She's having a tough time, he said, softening his tone. I put down my sketch pad. We're living paycheck to paycheck, Ethan. Her tough time is becoming our problem. His expression hardened. She's my sister. I can't just throw her out. But you expect me to just accept this? I could feel my frustration bubbling over. No discussion? No warning? We had to act fast. You know how it is with her exes. His tone was defensive, almost pleading. And what about us? I fired back. We've been talking about starting a family, but now we're hosting your sister who's fresh out of her third divorce. How is this about a baby? Ethan's voice rose. Just for once, can we focus on her without making it about us? Ava peered around the corner, her eyes bright with curiosity. Am I interfering with something? I can leave if it makes things easier, she said, but the gleam in her eye suggested she was enjoying the drama. All I'm saying is, this needs to have a deadline, I said decidedly, ignoring Ava's attempt to play the martyr. We can't keep bending our lives to fit her crises. Ethan sighed heavily. We'll talk about it, he conceded, rubbing the back of his neck. Good, I said sternly, because this can't be indefinite. Ava's smirk didn't waver as she settled into our home, but I caught a flicker of irritation in her eyes. She wasn't going to make this easy, but I refused to let her disrupt our lives without a plan to reclaim our own space. I slammed the laundry basket on the table, the noise echoing through the house. Ava's clothes were mixed in with ours, her designer labels standing out starkly. I'd only been able to save a fraction of my quiet mornings, now filled with Ava's constant presence. Ethan spotted my irritation and walked over. Josie, please. It's been a tough few weeks. And you think it's been a picnic for me? I snapped back, yanking out a bright red dress that obviously wasn't mine. She's taken over everything, Ethan. When is enough going to be enough? He glanced back at the living room where Ava was lounging, flipping through a magazine. I know it's not easy, but we're family. I threw a t-shirt into the basket with more force than necessary. That excuse is wearing thin. Ethan sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. Just a little longer, Josie, please. Ava's voice floated into the room, cutting off our conversation. Ethan, can you get me another coffee? Ethan's jaw tightened, but he nodded and walked into the kitchen. I followed, watching as he poured coffee into a mug, clearly frustrated. You're spoiling her, I whispered. She's never going to leave. He put the coffee down harder than he needed to. What do you want me to do, Josie? She's my sister. Ava's voice carried over again. Ethan, where's that coffee? He glanced at me, defeated, then back towards the living room. Coming. Just give me a minute. Once he left the kitchen, I turned my attention back to the laundry. This wasn't just about the inconvenience. It was about our future being put on hold indefinitely. I couldn't stop thinking about the family we'd talked about starting. Every conversation seemed to be derailed by Ava, her needs taking precedence over ours. That evening, as we sat around the dinner table, the tension was palpable. Ava chewed her salad leisurely, glancing up with a careless smile. You know, it's really nice having people to take care of me for once. I might just stay forever. I clenched my fork, my knuckles turning white. Hopefully you find your own place soon. It's been a while since we've had the house to ourselves. Ava shrugged, unfazed. We'll see. After dinner, I confronted Ethan. She doesn't respect our space, Ethan. She's treating this like a hotel. He looked tired, but he didn't respond, just stared at his plate. I've had it, Ethan. We need to have this conversation now. I want a family, and I want it soon. But with Ava here, it's impossible, I said firmly. Ethan looked up, pain in his eyes. We'll talk about it later, I promise. I turned away, feeling a mix of frustration and determination. I knew this was my line in the sand. Don't make promises you can't keep. As I walked out of the room, I could feel Ava's eyes watching me. She knew exactly what she was doing, but I was equally determined. This wouldn't be the end of our story. We needed to reclaim our future, no matter what. Ethan, we need to talk about this, I said, standing in the middle of the living room. Ava can't stay here indefinitely. We had plans, remember? Ethan shifted uncomfortably on the couch. I know, Josie, but she needs us right now. It's not about needs, it's about boundaries, I replied, glancing at Ava, who was sprawled on the other couch, scrolling through her phone with a smirk on her face. Don't stop on my account, Ava said. I'm just living my best life here. That's the problem, I said, my voice rising. You're living your best life while ours is falling apart. Ava put down her phone and looked at me with mock sympathy. Oh, come on, Josie. Don't be so dramatic. I'm not being dramatic, Ava. I'm being realistic, I snapped. We need our space back. Ethan and I need to focus on us. Ethan stood up, rubbing his temples. This isn't the time for this conversation. Then when? I demanded. You keep pushing it back, and it's only getting worse. Ava's phone rang, and she picked it up with an exaggerated sigh. Hello? Yes, I'll be there in a minute. Oh, and don't worry, I've got everything under control here. She glanced at me with a smirk. Looks like I've got dinner plans. Don't wait up. As she breezed out the door, Ethan slumped back onto the couch. I don't know what to do, Josie. She's been through so much. And what about us, Ethan? I pressed. We've been through a lot, too. When do we get to focus on our own lives? He looked at me, his eyes filled with pain. I need more time, Josie. I'm running out of patience, Ethan, I said quietly. We need to find a solution, and soon. Days passed, and Ava's presence became more overbearing. She left her things scattered all over the house, took long calls at odd hours, and commandeered the TV for her shows. It felt like she was everywhere, all the time. Then one evening, I overheard a phone conversation that made my blood boil. Ava was lounging in the backyard, talking loudly. Yeah, I'm totally living the life here, she said. They're such pushovers. I mean, seriously, I could stay here forever, and they wouldn't kick me out. Ethan wouldn't, at least. Josie? She's a different story, but I've got her wrapped around my finger. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. I had had enough. I marched outside, my heart pounding in my chest. Enjoying your private phone call? I said, my voice icy. Ava looked up, startled, then quickly recovered. Just catching up with an old friend. Is that a problem? It is when you're plotting to take advantage of us, I said, stepping closer. This isn't your home, Ava. It's time you found your own place. I'm family, Ava retorted, her eyes narrowing. You can't just throw me out. Watch me, I said, my voice shaking with anger. You've overstayed your welcome. Ethan appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. What's going on? Ava's leaving, I said firmly. Tonight. Ethan looked between us, torn. Josie. No, Ethan. This has gone on long enough. Ava stood up, fury in her eyes. You'll regret this, Josie. You're making a big mistake. I'll take my chances, I said. Pack your things, Ava. It's over. As Ava stormed back into the house, I glanced at Ethan. I had to do it. For us. He nodded slowly, sadness etched on his face. I know. We'll figure it out. Watching Ava pack and leave wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Our lives had been thrown into chaos, and we needed to reclaim them. This was just the beginning. I was ready to fight for our future, no matter what. I sat across the desk from the attorney, a stack of papers in front of me. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, amplifying the tension. The attorney peered over his glasses, scanning the documents. These are inheritance papers from your grandmother? He asked, tapping the stack. Yes, I replied, leaning forward. I need to know my legal standing regarding the house. He nodded slowly, flipping through the pages. Interesting. This document here suggests you have a significant claim to the property. It seems you co-own it, Josie. A surge of relief washed over me, but I kept my composure. What does that mean exactly? It means, he said, looking up, you have as much right to the house as Ethan does. Any decisions about living arrangements should include you. I felt a sense of empowerment. Perfect. Thank you. Leaving the attorney's office, I felt a newfound determination. Ava wouldn't walk all over me anymore. I stood outside, the autumn breeze rustling the leaves, and made my decision. Back at home, Ava was in the kitchen, chatting loudly on her phone. She didn't even acknowledge me as I walked in. Well, since I'm here indefinitely, I might as well look into redecorating, she laughed into the phone. I clenched my fists, anger boiling within me. Ava, we need to talk. She glanced up lazily. Can it wait? I'm kind of busy. No, it can't, I said firmly. I took a deep breath. I visited an attorney today. I co-own this house, and that means I have a say in who stays and who goes. And I'm saying you need to go. Ava's eyes widened, then narrowed. You can't just kick me out, Josie. Ethan won't agree to this. He's on my side. I straightened my shoulders. This is our house, Ava, not just Ethan's, and I've had enough of you treating it like your personal hotel. Just then, Ethan walked in, confusion etched on his face. What's going on here? I stood my ground. I went to see an attorney, and it turns out I co-own this house. I have a legal right to decide who stays here. Ava needs to leave. Ethan's face fell, shock taking over. You did what? You heard me, I said, my voice steady. It's time for her to go. Ava glared at me, her face twisted in anger. You think you've won, Josie? You have no idea what you're getting into. I'll take my chances, I replied coldly. Ethan looked torn, his eyes darting between Ava and me. Josie, this is too much. No, Ethan, I said quietly. This is about us reclaiming our lives. It's about starting a family, about our future. Ava's presence here has made everything worse. Ava took a step forward, her face flushed with rage. You can't do this. I'm family. I matched her step, my voice firm. And this is my home. You need to leave. Ethan put a hand on his forehead, sighing deeply. Ava, maybe it's time. We need to focus on our lives here. Ava seemed to freeze, betrayal flashing across her face. Fine, she spat. I'll leave, but don't think for 1 second that this is over. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I turned to Ethan, my resolve unwavering. We need to move forward, Ethan. For us. He nodded slowly, sadness and understanding mingling in his eyes. We will, Josie, we will. As I watched Ava's car disappear down the street, I felt a sense of victory but also lingering tension. I knew this was only the beginning of reclaiming our home and our future. Our battle wasn't over, but for now, we had taken a step towards regaining control. The tension in the house was almost tangible. Ethan and I sat at the kitchen table, the silence punctuated by the ticking clock. I knew we needed to have the conversation that had been looming over us, about our future, and about Ava. We need to talk, I said, breaking the silence. Ethan glanced at me, his shoulders sagging. I know. I want us to start a family, Ethan, but Ava's constant presence is driving a wedge between us. It's not just about space, it's about our relationship, I explained, my voice steady but firm. He looked down, fiddling with the coffee mug in his hands. I get it, Josie. Believe me, I do. But she's my sister. And I'm your wife, I countered. We've been dancing around this issue for too long. As if on cue, the front door banged open. Ava stormed in, her eyes blazing. Call a family meeting? What is there to talk about? She demanded, dropping her bag on the floor with a thud. I stood up, holding the inheritance papers like a shield. These prove that I co-own this house. You can't stay here without my consent. Ava's face contorted in fury. You think a piece of paper changes anything? Ethan's my brother. Blood is thicker than a stupid legal document. Ethan stood, stepping between us. Ava, this is serious. We need to talk about what's best for everyone. Ava's laugh was hollow. What's best for everyone, or what's best for Josie? This isn't just about me, I said, my voice shaking with emotion. This is about our future, Ethan's and mine. We want to start a family, and we can't do that with you here. Ethan turned to Ava. She's right, Ava. I love you, but we've got to think about our lives too. Ava's eyes glittered with anger. You're choosing her over me? Your own sister? I'm choosing my wife, Ava. We have to move forward. You'll regret this, Ava hissed. She snatched her bag off the floor and marched toward the door. "Don't think for a second this is over. You haven't seen the last of me." We watched her go, the door slamming shut behind her. Ethan sank back into his chair, his face a study in turmoil. "Did we do the right thing?" he asked quietly. "I believe we did," I replied, sitting back down. "We needed to set boundaries, for our sake." Days passed, and the house felt strangely quiet, the absence of Ava's chaos almost unsettling. Yet, underneath the calm, a tension lingered. Ethan and I cautiously began rebuilding our routines, our talk of starting a family inching back into conversations. One evening, while folding laundry, I noticed a tear-streaked letter amongst the papers Ava had left behind. It hinted at unpaid debts and manipulation, calling into question everything she had said. Determined, I made a call to our attorney, setting an appointment to discuss further actions we could take. I was ready to protect our future, no matter the cost. Over the next few weeks, Ethan and I started to heal, even finding moments of peace. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Ava was still out there, watching and waiting. It was a fragile peace, and I knew we had to be vigilant. As Ethan and I stood together, planning our future in hushed tones, I felt a spark of hope. We had reclaimed our home. Now, we would fight to keep it. The news that Ava was back in town spread quickly. Ethan and I were trying to rebuild our lives, to return to some sense of normalcy, but Ava's shadow loomed large. One evening, as we sat down to dinner, the phone rang. Ethan answered, his face growing pale as he listened. "Ava," he whispered, putting the call on speakerphone. "Miss me?" Ava's voice was sharp and mocking. "You didn't think I'd disappear that easily, did you?" "Ava, what do you want?" I asked, my voice steely. "Oh, just wanted to remind you two that family is forever," she replied sweetly. "I was hoping we could reconcile." "Reconcile?" Ethan's voice was wary. "Yes, little brother, you see, I've had some time to think and I realized that maybe I was too hasty. Let's meet and talk," she said. "Where?" I asked, not hiding my suspicion. "There's a cafe downtown, tomorrow at noon," she said, and the line went dead. Ethan and I exchanged glances, worry etched on his face. "Josie, what if she means it? Or what if she's planning something?" I replied. When we arrived at the cafe the next day, Ava was already there, sipping on a latte. She smiled as we approached, but there was no warmth in her eyes. "Glad you could make it," she said, gesturing to the seats opposite her. "Ava, why did you call us here?" I asked, cutting to the chase. "Straight to business, huh? No pleasantries?" She laughed, a cold, empty sound. "Fine, I need money." Ethan stiffened. "Money? For what?" "To fix the mess you two made in my life. Remember, I was the one uprooted," she said, leaning forward. "I need help with my debts." We were silent for a moment. Ava's demanding nature hadn't changed. If anything, it had become more desperate. "We can't just give you money, Ava," I said firmly. "Really?" Her eyes flashed with anger. "You owe me. Compensate me for the life you disrupted." "Ava, you were the one who stayed for months causing trouble," Ethan said, his voice equally firm. She sighed dramatically. "Fine. If it's not money you'll give, maybe your support. I need a favor." "What kind of favor?" I asked warily. "Just a place to stay for a while, a roof over my head until I sort things out," she said, her tone almost pleading. Ethan looked at me, conflicted. "Josie?" "No," I said, shaking my head. "We've been through this. You need to stand on your own, Ava." Ava's expression turned icy. "I see. So this is your final answer?" "Yes," I replied firmly. "It is." She stood, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "Remember my words, Ethan. Family is forever." With that, she stormed out of the cafe, leaving us in a tense silence. Ethan reached for my hand, his grip tight. "We did the right thing," he said, more to convince himself than me. "Did we?" I whispered, the doubt creeping in. As weeks passed, Ava didn't let up. She sent messages, left voicemails, and once even showed up at Ethan's workplace, causing a scene. She was relentless, her presence a constant reminder of the turmoil she brought into our lives. One night, Ethan came home looking more worn out than ever. "She was at my office again today." "Ethan, we can't keep living like this," I said, my frustration spilling over. "She's pushing and pushing, trying to break us." "We need to find a way to stop her," he agreed. "For good." In that moment, I saw a spark of the old determination in Ethan's eyes. We would fight this battle together. Ava's reign of terror in our lives had to end. We would find a way to reclaim our peace and future, no matter what. Late one evening, Ethan and I sat in the living room, drowning in the constant pressure caused by Ava's harassment. The phone rang again, piercing the quiet. Ethan picked up, his voice weary. "Hello? Ethan, it's Ava. Miss me?" Her voice dripped with malice. "What do you want, Ava?" Ethan asked, his patience worn thin. "I'm just making sure you remember that family sticks together," she replied, the threat barely concealed. "I need you to help me, or else there'll be consequences." "Or else what?" I interjected, grabbing the phone from Ethan's hand. "Or else I start talking," she replied smoothly. "People might be interested in hearing some of the skeletons in your family's closet." "What are you talking about, Ava?" Ethan asked, his voice shaking. "Oh, you'll find out soon enough," she said and hung up. Ethan's face was pale. What could she be talking about? "We need to get ahead of this," I said firmly. The next morning, we decided to visit Ethan's parents. If there were secrets, they needed to be unearthed now. We found his mother in the garden, tending to her roses. "Mom, we need to talk," Ethan said seriously. She looked up, concern etching her face. "What's wrong, Ethan?" "Ava's threatening to reveal secrets about our family," he explained. His mother's hands trembled as she lowered her gardening tools. "Oh no," she whispered. "What is it?" I pressed. "There were things," she began hesitantly. "Things about Ava we tried to keep hidden, to protect her." "Protect her from what?" Ethan asked, frustrated. "She was manipulative, even as a child," she admitted. "Always playing people against each other, creating chaos. We thought she'd grow out of it, but it only got worse." "Why didn't you tell us?" I asked, shocked. "We didn't want to tarnish the family name," she said softly. "But it looks like she's not going to stop." Back at home, Ethan and I tried to piece together our next steps. Ava's threats loomed over us like a storm cloud. That evening, another call came. "You still haven't agreed to help me," Ava's voice taunted. "Tick-tock, time's running out." "Ava, we know about your past," Ethan stated bluntly. "We're not going to let you control us anymore." A silence followed. Then she laughed. "So you're finally willing to play dirty? Let's see how far you'll go." The line went dead. The next day, Ava's threats materialized. She posted old family secrets online, damaging Ethan's reputation and stirring up a storm. Ethan's boss called, concerned about the rumors. "What are we going to do?" Ethan asked, feeling defeated. "We fight back," I replied, determined. "We expose her for the manipulative liar she is." With newfound resolve, we started gathering evidence of Ava's manipulations. We contacted everyone she'd wronged, collecting testimonies and documents. We drafted a comprehensive report detailing her history of deceit. The showdown came when we called a family meeting. Ava arrived, smug and confident, convinced she still held power over us. "What's this about?" she asked, looking around the room. "We have something to show you," I said, sliding the thick report across the table. "Your history of manipulation, laid bare." Her eyes widened as she flipped through the pages. "This is all lies," she shrieked. "It's the truth," Ethan said, his voice steady. "And we're ready to take this public if you don't stop." Ava's face contorted in rage. "You wouldn't dare." "Try us," I replied coldly. She slammed the report shut and stood up, her composure shattered. "This isn't over," she spat and stormed out. Ethan and I stood together, united. We had taken the first steps in reclaiming our lives from her grasp. The battle wasn't over, but we were no longer afraid. We were ready to fight for our future, no matter what Ava threw our way. Ethan and I woke up to a strange calm that morning. Ava's departure left a void, but it was a void filled with potential. We had endured the worst, and now it was our time to rebuild. As we sat at the breakfast table, Ethan looked at me with a small, hopeful smile. "What do you want to do today?" "Let's start fresh," I said, feeling a spark of excitement. "Let's renovate the guest room, make it our own." Ethan nodded. "That sounds perfect." We spent the day picking out new paint colors and furniture, laughing as we debated over swatches. It felt like a return to normalcy, a step toward the future we had longed for. Emily, our neighbor and friend, dropped by to see the progress. She peered into the room, seeing the half-painted walls and new decor. "Wow, it looks amazing already." "Thanks. We're trying to make it our own," I said, smiling. Emily nodded, understanding. "You both deserve this fresh start." As we worked, Ethan turned to me, wiping a streak of paint from his cheek. "You know, Josie, I've been thinking, maybe it's time we took the next step, started trying for that family we talked about." My heart leaped. "Really?" He nodded, his eyes filled with warmth. "Really? I want us to have that future we dreamed of." A few days later, Ava's retribution came in the form of a bitter email, laced with anger and threats. She claimed we hadn't seen the last of her, that she would find a way to disrupt our lives again. Ethan deleted the email, turning away from the screen. "We can't let her control us anymore," he declared. Emily sat with us that evening, lending her support. "You've done everything you can. Now it's about focusing on your happiness." Ethan nodded, squeezing my hand. "It's time to move forward." And so we did. Each day brought a small victory, repainting a room, planning a garden, talking about potential baby names. We reshaped our home and our lives, finding joy in the new possibilities. One evening, as we sat on the porch sipping tea and watching the sunset, Ethan turned to me. "Do you think she'll ever truly leave us alone?" I took his hand, feeling the strength in his grip. "Maybe not. But we've learned how to stand up to her. That's what matters." Ethan sighed, a mix of relief and determination in his eyes. "You're right. We have each other, and that's enough." As the summer days lengthened, our home became a sanctuary again, the echoes of Ava's chaos fading into the background. We celebrated small milestones, repainting the last room, planting the first seeds in our garden, sharing quiet evenings together. Knowing that Ava's presence could resurface at any moment, we remained vigilant but not fearful. We had faced the worst and come out stronger. We had reclaimed our home and our future. Life was not perfect, but it was ours. Ethan and I embraced each day with a new sense of purpose, determined to build the family and the future we had always dreamed of. And as the sun set on another day, we knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, standing tall and resilient. With hope in our hearts and the promise of new beginnings, we looked forward to the bright horizons yet to come.